It's the first week of February, and research suggests that 43% of Americans that made New Year's resolutions have already quit them. It gets worse, only 9% of Americans will actually complete their New Year's resolutions. It's not any better in the UK. 1 in 6 people keep up their New Year's resolutions for 4 to 6 months, and only 6% keep their New Year's resolutions until the end of the year. All this to say, if you feel like throwing in the towel when it comes to your New Year's resolutions, you are not alone. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Winnie, and just like you, I'm constantly looking for ways to help me stick to my habits and achieve my goals. In this video, I'd like to share with you 5 tips that have helped me successfully stick to new habits and achieve my goals. Now, there are various factors that lead to the rather depressing statistic that I started this video with. A common mistake that people tend to make when setting goals for themselves, whether at the start of the new year or really any other time, is relying solely on motivation to get them from step 0 to completion. Don't get me wrong, motivation is fantastic. It's a powerful force that propels us and hypes us up to set that goal and to start it. It's the burst of enthusiasm that makes you sign up for that new fitness plan, to announce to your friends that you give up alcohol in 2024, that this is the year that you're going to get your finances together, or to anyone that will listen that you're going to start running in 2024. But really, that's as far as motivation is going to get you. Also, motivation is fickle. It's like that friend that you have that is super fun, always a great time, but disappears every so often. And you know that in case of an emergency, you will not be calling them. Yep, that's motivation. This is exactly why we need something stable and more reliable to carry us through our goals. Enter consistency. Consistency is what is going to get you to the finish line. The lack of it is typically what trips people up, because it's hard, it's not fun, it's not sexy, and actually it's boring. But it has a compounding effect that motivation alone lacks. So here are my 5 tips to help you build consistency in this new year. Number 1, start small. Break down the goals that you're trying to achieve into small and actionable steps, and start with the very first one and complete it. Why do you need to complete it? Because of a psychological effect called the snowball effect. The snowball effect is a psychological term that explains how small actions at the beginning can cause bigger and bigger actions that ultimately result in huge change. Think of a snowball or a pebble rolling down from a mountain that eventually results in an avalanche. This is the kind of concept that we're trying to think of when I say start small. Break down those goals into small steps and start with the first one. And the idea behind it is that when you start and complete the first step, there's a snowball effect that could help you stick to the other steps that you have on your way to completing your goal. The second tip is to create a sustainable plan. Sometimes when we want to achieve a big goal, we get very excited and we set out this plan and these different steps that may not be sustainable in the long run. So it is important to adapt your plan to achieve your goals to meet you currently where you are at. When you set the steps to achieve your goals, take into consideration your capacity for stress. If you're learning a new skill, are you a fast learner or a slow learner? Keep these things in mind when you create your plan or when you start planning on how you want to achieve your goal. Because when your plan is not sustainable, it's very easy to throw in the towel very early on. It's also important to remember that what may constitute a small step for one person may not be the same for you. Hence why it's important to strike that balance between steps towards your goals that stretch you versus the ones that break you down early on, whereby you can actually complete the step and achieve your goal. All I'm trying to say here is don't take on too much too quickly. Take it easy and create a plan that is suitable to where you are at based on what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to eat better, you're not going to go from eating super unhealthy day one. You're not going to go from eating super unhealthy today to being on a very restrictive diet tomorrow. I mean, you could, but it's very unlikely that that's going to sustain itself over time. So it's important to think of, okay, I am not eating really healthy right now. Where can I start to make small adjustments that are sustainable for me and that fit me? So this is the reason it's important to create sustainable steps that are easy to keep on to versus going from 0 to 100 too quickly. The third tip is to plan for friction. When you are taking on anything new, any kind of challenge, friction is going to come through. It is inevitable. So it's important to prepare for this. 365 days is a long time to keep anything going. You will get tired. You will want to stop. All of this is part of the process, and you should expect this and plan for it accordingly. So how can you do that? The best way to handle this is to create systems that make it easy to anticipate friction depending on what goal it is that you're trying to achieve. So for example, for me, I made a goal last year that I want working out and being physically fit to just be a part of my life. Not something that I'm doing because I want to look skinny for the summer, but because it's just how I want my life to be. I want to be physically fit. And a great way for me was to create a process that made it very, very difficult for friction to get through. I made a decision that I'm going to work out 3 times a week. And I choose the time of the week, or I choose the time of the day that works for me. I do my workouts in the morning before I'm fully awake, before my brain can make up excuses. That's a system that works for me. Figure out where you're at, figure out what kind of friction could come up, and how can you plan for it accordingly. Another thing that I do is I make a decision. I already know what I'm going to wear when I'm going to the gym, so I don't have to think about it. So removing these different steps can reduce the amount of friction when it comes to achieving your goal. So think about the goal that you're trying to achieve. Where are the different places where you see yourself making excuses? Where are the different parts of achieving your goal where friction could come in? And by friction, I mean things that make it a little bit difficult to achieve that goal. So think about, for example, if you want to start running, let's assume that's a goal that you have, and you're not a morning person. It doesn't make sense for you to start a plan where you're suddenly going to be going running in the morning. It's very unlikely you will stick to it, because we are going to get a lot of friction when it comes to waking up in the morning in month 2, in month 3. It's not going to be so fun as it was in January. So it's important to figure that out. If you know you're not a morning person, remove your workouts from the morning and do them in the evenings. The fourth tip I would recommend is accountability. It's really important to think about accountability when you think about the steps that's going to lead you to completing whatever goal it is that you've set for yourself, or whatever habit it is that you're trying to build. Think of schools and the workplace that have well-established systems of accountability. That's the reason 99% of anything gets done, because you know someone is going to hold you accountable if you don't meet X deadline, if you don't complete your studies within a particular period of time. All of these are set in place to ensure that people stick to what they've been tasked to do. And you need to leverage the same kind of thinking when it comes to building new habits or achieving any goal that you've set for yourself. It is also really important to understand that being accountable may come easier to some than others, and it's even more crucial for you to understand where you are at. For me personally, in certain areas I can be really disciplined and keep myself accountable, and there are other areas where I struggle. So depending on what habit it is that you're trying to build, on what goal that you're trying to achieve, try and figure out where you are, what weaknesses you may have, and make sure you set up accountability processes to keep you honest. Whether that's a coach, whether that's a friend, figure that out, because that is going to help you in the long run, especially when the going gets tough, because it will. The final tip here is to be kind to yourself. We tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves when it comes to goal setting, and sometimes even punish ourselves when we don't hit certain milestones. This ultimately is not a great relationship to have with yourself and could even be toxic. So when you don't hit certain milestones on your journey to building a new habit or to achieving a goal that you've set for yourself, take a moment and pause. This is why it's necessary to be kind to yourself, particularly on the days when it's really, really difficult. Take a moment, take a break if you need to. And this is also a good time to spend some time reflecting on why it is that you're not sticking to your goal. What is the reason? And this is something that actually you could bring up with whoever it is that is holding you accountable, maybe your coach or your friend. But here are a couple of questions that you could ask yourself, particularly in the moments where you're struggling to stick to a habit or to achieve a goal. Is there a problem with the goal or the habit that with the goal that you set for yourself or the habit you're trying to build? Are you struggling to be consistent because this is something that you think you should do versus what you really want to do? Sometimes when we are struggling with being consistent with a new habit or with a goal, this in and of itself is a data point to not ignore, but want to really pay attention to and try to understand where it's coming from. Is it coming from the fact that we are maybe being a bit lazy and we want to give up? Or is it really because we don't really want to do this and we've chosen this habit or this goal for the wrong reasons? It's really important to take some more time to check in with yourself and try and figure out where this is all coming from. Something else to consider when you're struggling with being consistent is to ask yourself, is it possible to maybe lower the bar for what constitutes success? Sometimes when we set the bar too high for ourselves, it may be really, really difficult for us to feel good, feel that we are gaining momentum. And sometimes it might make sense to lower that bar a little bit. Another example, when you think about lowering the bar for what constitutes success, is, for example, if you've said to yourself, oh, I'm going to go running 4 times a week, and you've not done that before, maybe you go twice a week and you see how you keep on doing that. And again, it goes back to that snowball effect. Once you start small actions, it will snowball into bigger action. So when you're struggling with consistency, another question that you could ask yourself is it possible to create some more positive associations with the different milestones that you've set for yourself to hit as you're on the journey to achieving your goal or building that new habit? What are the things you can do to make it more fun? Because ultimately, when we are having fun, we tend to stick to it more. So think about ways that you can create some positive associations. And then finally, when we are struggling with consistency to an extent, it's an important time to consider, is there an opportunity? Should we pivot? Is there an opportunity to maybe fix the goal? Maybe this goal is not working for me. Maybe this habit is not really what I thought it was going to be. Can I change it to something else? And have these conversations quite honestly with yourself to figure out what is causing it. And if you're not satisfied, then pivot, change it, pick something else. Whatever it is that you do, make sure that you're taking into considerations how you're feeling, and you're striking a balance between what is good for you, what is stretching you, what is going to make you a better person versus something that makes you miserable. It is going to be difficult. There is just no way around it. No one that has achieved anything and no one that has started a new, stuck to a new habit has done so in a smooth way where there are no obstacles. There will be obstacles. It's just really important to figure out what is an obstacle that you can overcome with consistency and determination and discipline, and what is an obstacle that is an opportunity to actually maybe have a think and pivot. You're the only one that can figure that out for yourself. Finally, I'm going to leave you with 2 book recommendations that go on to discuss this topic of building new habits and achieving our goals with the help of consistency and not only relying on motivation. So the first book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is one of my favorite personal development books. I love this book so much. And it talks about how making small micro changes in our lives can result in bigger changes. Goes back to that snowball effect I mentioned earlier. One of the key takeaways for me from Atomic Habits, especially when you're trying to build a new habit or to achieve anything that you're trying to do, is to think about how you can make this change from the inside out versus the outside in. A classic example is, I could say, okay, I'm making a lot of running examples because I just started running last year and it's been an interesting journey for me in how I stick to something, and I've been doing it quite successfully. So when it comes to what James Clear talks about in his book that I really love and resonates really well with me is to make sure that when you're trying to start something new, you try to do this from the inside out versus the outside in. So I don't say that, oh, I'm going to go for a run, or I go for a run 1 or 2 times, because that's something that I do and that's an external thing. But if I say that I'm a runner, which is what I am, then it makes sense that I'm going to go running X amount of time, because simply that's who I am. And it talks a lot about internalizing the outcome of who you're trying to be, because then it's easier to do those things because that's what someone that is that does. I hope that makes sense. I really love Atomic Habits and I would highly recommend it. The second book that I'll recommend is The Motivation Myth by Jeff Haden. I actually haven't, Jeff Haden. I'll put it in the comment section below. I haven't read this book yet, but this has come highly recommended, and most people have said that if you really like Atomic Habits, you would like this book too. So I'm going to read this myself. Again, I think it's really important for us to not always rely on motivation. Motivation is great. Like I said earlier, it is fickle, and we cannot rely on only motivation. We have to find other things to help us, like consistency, discipline, and determination, and a couple of those other tips that I mentioned earlier as well. Well, that's it from me. I hope some of these tips that I shared resonates with you, and do let me know in the comment section below if there are any other tips that you have used to help you achieve your goals and stick to new habits in the past. I pray that 2024 is our best year yet. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and like the video, and yeah, I will see you in my next one. Bye.